how to hit it.
All right.
No, I mean the flash.
Okay, I guess we can go ahead and get started.
Well, I could do it now, I guess.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Daryl Berry with Transwestern at the RBC Plaza. I'm currently the president of the Engineer Employment Association. Before we get started, we have a couple of announcements to make. Registration is open for our October general meeting, providing details and factual information on City of Minnesota lectures and the possible impact in our industry. Excuse me. Our presenters share their knowledge and experience to engage and educate our members about the state of candidates and the possible outcome. This will be a 1-hour webinar. Get your teams registered. Our next engineering meeting will be held in person on November 3rd. It will be an informal section on energy, ideas, and buildings, providing you with the knowledge and the life cycle of building equipment. Registration will be next Tuesday and will be communicated in our connection meeting and email. As of October, BOMA has their 15 for 12 membership deal, where you are able to join the BOMA team for the rest of the year with no cost. If you or someone from a member company would like to join, please get a hold of Raleigh. Register your building for the 2022 BOMA Toby competition by Friday, October 15th. The Outstanding Building of the Year Toby Awards recognize excellence in property management, help foster teamwork, and set properties apart. Prior to our presentation, we will have a couple of guest speakers discussing continuing education, designations, opportunities for building engineers / FMs professionals. Denise Jenkins with St. Paul BOMA will explain what BOMA has to offer in classes for both designations. And Scott Peterson will explain the benefits of employees attending lessons in class. After Denise and Scott speak, we will have our presentation. Our presentation will be given from Paul Maverick and Lou Noro. Paul is an operating manager with Minnesota Controls and earned his degree in introductory engineering and energy systems from Hennepin Tech. Paul has over 30 years experience. Our second speaker will be Lou. He is an engineer with Grover Mechanical and has over 10 years experience in the field. With that said, I will now turn it over to Denise and Scott.
Thank you. We just want to take a moment and talk briefly about the SMT and the SMA classes that St. Paul Boma holds on a regular basis. We generally try to hold three SMT classes a year and 2 SMA classes a year. They run for about a 7-week period, and we make sure that we take summers off because we know everybody has really busy schedules. The SMT class consists of 5 classes. It's air handling, water treatment, and plumbing systems. The second one would be boilers, heating systems, applied mathematics. There's electrical systems and illumination, energy management and controls, and refrigeration systems and accessories. Now, you do not need to take these classes in any sort of order. It's just what's going on at the time. You can jump on and catch one. Once you get your SMT designation, if you want to continue on, you can do the SMA, and that includes 3 more classes, which is environmental health and safety issues, managing the organization, and building design and maintenance. And some of those do cross over to the SMA class. So if you're working on getting that designation, you can definitely call us and say, hey, I want to get into this class because I'm trying to finish out that particular designation. With that, I'll let Scotty talk to you a little bit more about the classes as he is the instructor.
Guys, I would like to talk to you about the benefits that are happening for signing up with the class. And the thing that is key with that is you guys get to go to meetings and talk to other building members on a regular basis where your facility guys probably are not getting that opportunity to do that. When we're in the classes and when we're teaching in each subject, we talk about how different situations are handled. And for many, many years, Ecolab made this a requirement for their facility guys. As we would go through the ranks, we had to be required to go through the 5 SMT classes and graduate to keep our positions in with Ecolab. And it's still in existence today. So they've been running their guys through, and we strongly recommend that the rest of you guys maybe take a serious look at doing this. One, it's going to give your guys extra experience in being with those 5 categories that we're going to teach. If you have any guys that you want to eventually move on to management, we can move them into the SMAs. But the biggest thing of seeing this, and I've been teaching these classes for over 23 years now, is it's that discussion that we have at every class when we bring up the subject of what's going on. We talk about how things should be handled. And then a lot of times I will ask each guys, because they're there from different facilities, how did their building handle that situation when it came up? How did you guys relate? What did you guys do that was different? And it can be used as a great learning process. I can remember a couple times when guys had went back and said, yeah, we had that same issue and this is how we handled it. And then we'd have guys raise their hand and say, that's exactly what we're going through now. We haven't figured out how to solve this problem. We've been struggling with it. We've reached out to mechanical contractors and everything. They haven't been able to figure it out. So now we're going to take back what we learned in class and go and see if that solved the problem. And I can say in more than 1 or 2 cases, we had those facility guys come back and says, yep, guys, you were right on. It was what our problem was. We looked into it. We took care of it. Now we're to the point of, it's a solved issue and we're moving on. So you guys get to be in those meetings all the time. It gives your facility guys chances to be in groups with other facility guys in the same position. And they're talking about how their experiences of solving stuff and moving on. And it is a great learning experience. I think it expands. If you didn't have guys that came formally out of VOTEC, it broadens their horizons of what we could offer them through the SMT courses and the SMA. So it is a benefit to your company. So I would suggest you guys take a better look at it and see if you want to start running, make it a requirement for your facility guys and start to run them through the courses. It will be a benefit to your corporation.
All right, thank you, Denise and Scott. We really appreciate the information. With that, I would like to turn it over to Paul and Luke.
Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Paul Medved.
I'm Luke Norell.
We were asked to present some stuff today, some of our expertise on controls technology trends, what's trending in the industry, and as well as the benefits and requirements of keeping your systems up to date. You're looking at us now on the screen, but I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here with a PowerPoint presentation that we have. So hopefully you guys will quit looking at us and looking at the PowerPoint. So the subject of what we're talking about is trends in the control industry and maintaining existing systems and the benefits and requirements of that. So with that, I'm gonna kind of introduce ourselves. So Luke, you can go ahead and,
Sure.
and
I'll go ahead. I'm, as I said, my name's Luke. I'm a former electrician. I have a journeyman electrical license, and I more recently am working as a pipe fitter. I work for Local 455. Carry a journeyman license there as well. A lot of experience in just servicing HVAC equipment, and later on, for the past 7 years, I've been doing control work for Gilbert Mechanical. That's kind of a summary of me.
so both of us have a combined 50 years experience in the industry, whether it be electrical install or service. We've worked at many different aspects. I came into the trade as a maintenance guy, so actually I got an SMT certification. So we were talking about your system maintenance technician. So that's a wonderful program. But I ended up doing regular mechanical service and then worked my way into controls. Been doing it for 30 years. Both of us have a unique perspective in that we know start to finish, from front end to device, how things work. So
Yeah, and I guess from my standpoint, as far as doing controls on HVAC equipment, that's critical. Having been guys that have serviced the equipment, you know how to program it. You know how they work. You can make them work as efficiently as possible without some major issues on the units.
I've always said it's easier to take a service guy, an HVAC service guy, and teach him controls than to take a control guy and teach him HVAC service.
Absolutely. Yep.
So with that said, the subject of our, oops, let me page down here. The subject of our presentation today is trends in energy management and controls. We're going to talk about web-based systems versus the old standby single front end, where you've got one computer that has the automation system on it. We're really going to go on to non-proprietary open systems. There's no reason why somebody should be buying a proprietary system. Even if you are in love with that particular brand, that particular contractor, in the future, that contractor may not be around, or that brand may not be around. And then we're going to be going into technology here. Luke's going to touch on that.
Yeah, so we're going to get into a handful of things on that. I don't want to get you too in depth just yet, but we're going to get into the IoT, the Internet of Things. We're going to touch on BACnet and some base communications over Ethernet, and some analytics, some kind of stuff that you guys can help to figure out how to make your building run more efficiently.
So we'll start here with web-based systems. Now, web-based systems have been around for a while. The differences that are coming down the pipe now is it used to be kind of a hybrid web-based system where you'd have a regular front-end computer with a web application laying on top of it. But now you're having the only way to access the system is over web-based.
Right, right. Which has its some serious benefits. You know, if you're if you get an alarm in the middle of the night, you pull up your phone, you look at the alarm, you can maybe clear it and go back to bed instead of having to go into the building and find the computer to go just dial in and see what's going on. So some definite benefits to it being web-based.
Yeah, a lot of the web-based systems are dependent on the architecture that your organization allows. When he talks about remote access, your organization has to allow that remote access. They have to allow a VPN connection or whatever it may be. But the base of the system is web-based. So once you can deal with your IT guys or your architecture of your system, then you can get at it.
Another nice aspect of that, like it says on the slide there, it can be used by multiple people at one time. The older systems that required just one dedicated server, that was the one computer. So if somebody's programming on it, he's the only guy that can look at the system at that point. Or if you have multiple building engineers working at the same time, only one can see it from their office. Now you can get this basically a web page you go to. It is a web page you browse to, and you can access it from anywhere and multiple people at the same time. Just makes a lot more usability of the system.
And like I said, pretty much every system now, if you get a new system, you upgrade your old, it's going to go to web-based. And you can access it with multiple devices. If you want to pull it up on a tablet, phone, just a regular PC, all that kind of stuff is usable for the web-based system.
It also allows us to, you used to have the dedicated server for your automation system sat, might be in the engineer's office, it might be tucked away in a mechanical room somewhere. It's physically sat on site. Now with this type of system, you're able to actually have that server be a cloud-based computer. So if you're a bigger building, maybe your IT has that capability. It doesn't have to be sitting in your pump room. It can have a much nicer home for that server. Or it even allows for, if you're a smaller building, or it allows for remote hosting. So from that standpoint, Paul's shop, our shop, we could host your server remotely. You don't have to physically have it sitting on site, and we perform the updates for you there.
Yeah, with that works real good for small buildings who don't want to buy a full-blown server or web-based server. It also works good for legacy type things that you want to bring into the new latest and greatest front end. So you could leave your legacy backnet or whatever it is out in the field and have your front end be cloud-based, hosted somewhere else. So that most of the controls contractors will offer that service for you, where they'll leave your data or leave your equipment, or you can have several small satellite buildings all talking to one supervisor front end.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. It's nice for large campuses too. You can have one main host for all these buildings. They're all run by the same people, but they can all access it without having to have that physical server on site.
So yeah, the key to that is getting the IT Nazis to buy in.
Right.
Or just taking it away from them and putting your own system, your own network, your own thing in that they don't deal with. So
Right.
So we're going to talk about open systems. Making sure, so we talked about web-based, and we're going to talk about open systems. Now, everyone says they're open. Open systems is not just a buzzword. So the key things I've got listed here to make sure that your system is open. The one is it accessible and supported and competed on the free market? Meaning, can anybody or a group of contractors be able to buy the equipment for you? And then the next thing is, Luke will go over here, is
next one is both the product platform designed to communicate with other systems via open protocols and standards. So you want to make sure you're not just getting locked down to where you bought one proprietary system and now I'm stuck with that. I can never add anything else to this. I don't want to get locked in unknowingly.
Yeah, for instance, if you buy a system and all of a sudden you want to integrate your lighting control to it, the system better be open and be able to pull that lighting control in, whether it's backnet or LAN or whatever it might be. So the third thing, I guess, is once it's installed and your, let's say you have a fallout with your contractor. Are there other contractors in town that can support it, that can buy parts for it, that can give you technicians that are trained in the system?
And that's huge. And, you know, first of all, having a system that is open, that can be worked on by multiple contractors. But then making sure that just because you have an open system doesn't mean that the contractor that installed it left it open. There's ways where they can lock the system down to where only they have access to it. You want to make sure you're avoiding that. That's something Paul and I talked about prior to this training. Neither of us lock our systems down to that extent. I want to make sure if I put something in, you're not happy with my work, that Paul can come work on it, or vice versa. I don't want you locked down to the point where it's no longer your system, it's mine. That should not be the goal of any contractor.
Right, and it appears that some of these contractors, they try to lock you in that way and make sure that if you buy a system, make sure that you buy an open license. There's on Niagara, there's open licenses and closed licenses. You also want to make sure, and Luke will touch on this, about databases for your unitary controls.
Yeah, so you've got, I mean, it's as simple as, you know, maybe it's just the wiring diagrams, how they laid your building out. You should have access to all of that when this gets installed. You've got trend log databases. You've got all kinds of stuff stored on that computer that you need to make sure you have access to at any time.
Yep, and then, like I said, just make sure that you can have multiple contractors work on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not happy with your controls contractor, you don't feel tied in. So that's the open system. We're gonna just touch on 2 open systems. We're gonna touch on BACnet and Niagara, the protocols, the 2 basic open protocols that are out there that are the most open. There's some out there too that are gonna call themselves open, like LAN and Modbus, but the lion's share of everything that's getting specified open is gonna be BACnet or Niagara. So Luke's going to go over BACnet control systems.
So in a nutshell, BACnet was developed by ASHRAE as a solution for all manufacturers having proprietary communication protocols. The standard was released in 1995 and conformance testing in 2003. So the main way of wiring a BACnet, or MSTP, I should say, network, is with a 22.2 cable, just a 2-wire cable, 22 gauge, or you can also do it over Ethernet.
And we'll touch base on the difference of those 2 later, a little bit further.
But just so you're aware of that when we get to that in a second. So the first BACnet manufacturer was Allerton back in 1996, with Delta and ALC following shortly after. Most other major manufacturers resisted the open BACnet protocol, but at this point, it's become popular enough, and it's open. It's what you want to have. A lot of them are being forced to embrace that protocol now, which leads to there currently being over 1,000 manufacturers being BACnet certified. Being BACnet certified requires passing ASHRAE's BTL testing in order to be listed as BACnet.
And the point of that is you don't have to pay through the nose to get it. You just need to send your product. If you want to build yourself a BACnet product, you build it to the specifications that ASHRAE calls out. You send it to them, they test it, and they get the BACnet stamp on it. So there's a lot of like LAN, you have to buy a chip from Echelon to get your device. So there's people making money on it. BACnet is not money for making money.
Right. It allows it to just be truly open, so anybody can use this platform. Anybody that's making this equipment. Another thing about the BACnet networks is all BACnet data is discoverable from most BACnet-based operating systems. And let's say Allerton, for example, I can scan in. Let's say I have a new generator that can talk BACnet. I can make my connections to it, whether it's through that MSTP cable or an Ethernet cable, whatever it needs. I can scan those points out of the generator, and I get data points which is good, but I get a temperature and it'll tell me a unit and what that temperature means. All that information just populates, provided the manufacturer put it in there to begin with. That's a lot different than some other protocols out there where you have to know what exactly that point was, and you have to write a weird formula in the background to spit out 100 degrees. You might have this big long string of code in the background just to give you a simple 100-degree temp.
So the next system we're going to talk about is tritium-based systems, Niagara systems. The tritium Niagara was established about the same time as BACnet. In 1995, Tritium came up with the Niagara framework. And basically it was a desire, just like BACnet was, to have open systems. Now, Tritium didn't establish a new protocol for communication. What they did is they established a framework that could integrate other things. And you could bring in multiple protocols if you wanted to, multiple devices, and Tritium would manage these protocols and devices. So you could have a LAN trunk, a BACnet trunk, a Modbus trunk. You can have all those coming into one controller, and the Tritium system would manage these. And they also decided to have an open API, it's called, meaning they allowed developers to work on it. They allowed developers to write drivers for it. They allowed developers to write Niagara community things that are neat little things for tracking schedules or something like that. So they're open. So what they did is they started after the R2 based system. They sold the R2 based system to TAC. So TAC, they used Tritium Niagara as the base of their system. They put their own flavor on it. Then they sold it to Honeywell. They sold it to JCI, just a ton of other ones. And then Honeywell bought them in, I think it was 2005, because Honeywell was using them for a lot of their open Jace controllers. So Honeywell's a huge company. They ended up buying them. But the thing is, they're run as a separate company. They aren't Honeywell, even though Honeywell owns them. Honeywell also owns Prestone or something too. So
Right.
they own a bunch of things, and
They own everything.
they own everything. It seems to be like it's like Jeff Bezos or something. But just because they're bought by Honeywell, don't let that fool you. That the Tritium stuff, like I said, they've got Johnson Allerton has a Tritium base thing, a part of their ACI or ACMs, slice of it.
Right.
So the N4 hardware was released in 2015. So you might have a lot of AX stuff out there, which is fine. It's just not supported anymore. The N4 was the big push for the N4 was to get rid of Java. So anything new is kind of N4 stuff. So basically what Tritium is, it's not a protocol. It's more of an upper management type system to monitor and communicate and with other things downstream. So the next thing we're going to discuss here is we're going to discuss companies in town and manufacturers that are working in open protocols, working with open systems, working with open non-proprietary parts. So I'll go through the manufacturers, and then we'll have Luke touch base there on the contractors. So the manufacturers that are using Tritium as their base is Honeywell has a Webs line, but Honeywell also has a Comfort Point line. The Comfort Point line is not open. It's only sold through the branch, the Honeywell branch. The Webs line is sold through 3 or 4 different contractors in town here. And then the Johnson Controls FX line is a popular line that is Tritium based. And that's sold to multiple contractors in town. Even if it's only sold to multiple contractors, I think anybody who's N4 certified can work on these systems. So, and then you got Vicon. What Vicon is, if you ever see Vicon, that is Tritium's brand of their own product. So if you see a Vicon Jace, it's a wide open Jace that doesn't even doesn't have the flavors of what they might have. Like a Honeywell will have a flavor that talks to the Honeywell controllers downstream better. And Johnson will have a flavor of thing or a module that will allow you to configure their Johnson stuff. But the Vicon stuff is wide open. And then Allerton has the ACM available, which is basically a Jace in another device.
Mm-hmm.
And then OEM manufacturers, there's hundreds of OEM manufacturers. You're going to buy an LG lighting system. It's got BACnet. You're going to buy, they might have a Tritium Jace for LG. Mitsubishi, you buy a Mitsubishi, their Mitsubishi controller is an actual Jace controller. Wattmaster has one. Phoenix has a flavor that's a Jace controller. There's a bunch of manufacturers that use Tritium Niagara as their OEM stuff. And then as far as BACnet, controls manufacturers that rely heavily on BACnet, and they're called native BACnet, meaning that the controllers in the field talk directly to the supervisor stuff. That would be Allerton with their Compass and their VLC lines, and Delta, and Schneider has a StructureWare line. So StructureWare it's kind of a proprietary front end, but it talks directly BACnet to its stuff. And then there's tons of smaller ones. Contemporary Controls has a little BACnet, a freeware that you can buy and just talk to BACnet. Wattmaster has a freeware. There's a couple other, and I call freeware, meaning it's a free front end that as long as you can talk to BACnet, it's not as fancy as the Allerton ones. It doesn't do it won't do scheduling as nice or as the Tritium, but. And then I'm gonna let Luke here touch on all the multiple contractors and technicians.
Yeah, so we've got a ton of contractors in the area that can service these BACnet and Tritium systems. So we're gonna, no particular order here, but Minnesota Controls and Gilbert Mechanical made the top of the list. I guess we're both sitting right here, so maybe that had something to do with it. But also Craft Controls, Metropolitan Mechanical, Harris Controls, Egan Companies, Architect Mechanical, Northland Mechanical, NAC, no, it's Northern Air, UHL, Yale Mechanical, Ameritech. All of these contractors have technicians that can work on these systems. I can't speak to the training level of specific, what specific things they know. You have to have a guy that knows your particular software you have in your building. But if you're not happy with your current contractor, look around. There's other people out there that can help you. You're not stuck on an island by yourself. There's help out there. And along those lines, both Paul and I are pipe fitters, so we know what's happening between our St. Paul and Minneapolis locals. But we're both locals are working on training apprentices now to be N4 certified, meaning they turn out with at least a background in some of this programming. So we can send apprentices or journeymen as they turn out to these contractors and try to provide a bigger workforce that can handle the new systems that are going online here.
We're almost right on schedule. Okay, so we talked about open systems. The next thing we're going to talk about is some technology things that you guys probably have heard, buzzwords that you're hearing bantered about. You're talking about the IoT or the Internet of Things, and you hear a lot of talk about smart buildings. These are industry buzzwords. These are words that engineers love throwing around, and you'll hear a ton of it. We're going to try to break down the what they are. So it's basically what I got here is a definition right from Wikipedia. That the Internet of Things is a physical connection of sensors and processing ability and software, and it's basically the Internet of Things is a device that is out in the field being brought into the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And then smart buildings, Luke's going to touch here on the buzzword of smart buildings.
Yeah, so at the most fundamental level, smart buildings deliver useful building services to make occupants productive. So we're talking combining your illumination, your temp control, your air quality, security, reporting, anything that can be automated in your building. It's trying to combine all that into one system. Sometimes easier said than done, to be honest, but it's out there.
Yeah, we'll touch that on the next slide. We're gonna go into a lot of the handcuffs of you know, everybody wants an Internet of Things, everybody wants a smart buildings, everyone wants to be on the cutting edge. But as I go to this next slide, we're gonna go through some of the things that are gonna handcuff you. You know, these are the things that are gonna stop you from your pipe dream of having a smart building and everything integrated. Number one is cost. You know, cost is always an obstacle when anytime you got technology. How much is this going to cost me to tie all this stuff together? So the next one is
cybersecurity concerns. So smart buildings require a lot of data, and we're getting points from all these different devices, and all this stuff is being gathered. How do we secure this now? Now, you know, we don't want to get hacked. We don't want to have anything happen to our building. How do we make sure we keep this separate and keep it safe, keep it locked down? I guess before you dive into trying to make your building a smart building, cybersecurity has to be on the forefront of your thoughts on that.
And one thing, controls guys and IT guys get along like cats and dogs. IT guys are the bane of our existence. Anytime we try to get on their network, anytime we try to get remote access, and the IT guys, trying to get them to buy in, they need pressure from someone besides the facility people. They need pressure from higher up.
And it can't come from us. They don't want to listen to us by any means. You can't touch my network. What do you mean? You want to do this? You want to do that?
So they don't see a benefit for them. IT guys are inherently paranoid, and it's part of their deal to be paranoid, to keep their system safe. And anything that doesn't give them an advantage or there's nothing in it for them to start opening up these networks or start managing these networks with hundreds of devices on them. That's not something they'll be looking for. So they're going to dig their heels in pretty tight. So
another hurdle you can run into is integration. So you're trying to get your HVAC system to talk to your lighting system, to talk to your security system, to talk to your on and on and on and on. How do these things actually work together? Who knows how to do this? Who knows how to, you know, okay, we got one guy that does our HVAC, one guy does our lighting. Who takes responsibility of that at that point? You know, who's gonna, if we're making this all one system, who's doing it?
Yeah, who's in charge? You gotta have a leader. You gotta have a focal point.
Yeah.
Master system integrator, you might hear the term, you know, there. So who is your master systems integrator? And now we've got different entities fighting to be the master systems integrator. So there's a lot of hurdles there. And even if you do decide you're going to do this, you've got to lay it out, you know, with somebody you trust, somebody trained and a contractor you trust, and before you even dabble your feet or get your feet wet. So the other thing I want to touch on real quick though too is in a multi-tenant building, I don't see how you could do this. If your tenant has card access and they're not going to want you to integrate to their card access. If your fire alarm system is different from one building to the other, but your HVAC is the same, there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that in a multi-tenant building. In an enterprise type setting, talk about right over here at Ameriprise or something like that. That might be a little bit more doable, but a multi-tenant building, good luck.
There are some, you know, without going to a full-blown smart building, there's some things I've done on some jobs to allow the systems to integrate, even though they don't actually talk to each other. So just for example, having a lighting occupancy sensor in the room, it turns on the lights, it's part of their lighting system. I just had them provide me a contact, so I know the lights turned on because the room's occupied, and now I can activate the HVAC system to go along with it. They don't truly talk to each other, but there's ways without going fully integrated to get the same general effect out of it.
Okay, so we're getting a little behind. We're gonna talk about the next big thing as everyone's pushing is BACnet over IP. There's two ways to talk BACnet. We touched base on it at the beginning. There's IP and MSTP. So Luke's gonna go over the differences between the two and some of the benefits and downfalls.
Sure. So in a nutshell, MSTP just stands for master slave token passing. It's just a technology that relies on sending that signal. It's a 2-wire installation. It's daisy chain. So you run from one controller to the next controller to the next. You can't branch off or star at any point. You just keep going down the line. BACnet over IP is going to use like the Ethernet cord you're used to plugging in for your computer for internet access. BACnet over IP consists of devices using IP addresses. These are unique identifiers. There's a lot more available, I should say, than there are for MSTP devices. This method doesn't rely on token passing like MSTP. Sorry, I'm I'm reading and trying to change my thoughts as I'm doing it here. It doesn't rely on token passing. It has a whole different method of communication. It's just it will be a lot quicker than token passing.
So the slide here shows you, we're going to try to, hopefully you guys are reading it, but what's really pushing the IP, BACnet over IP, in my opinion, is the engineers, the specifying engineers. Each one has its own, I guess, its own pluses and minuses. But Luke and I both agree that the MSTP, as long as you do follow all the rules, keep your segments short, do everything else, the MSTP is a little bit better. It's less expensive. It's what everyone's familiar with, and there's no reason to jump in with both feet into the IP pool.
At this point, it's a simpler installation. The technicians are familiar with how to do it, and you're not really noticing the speed difference for the type of data we're sending. You're not getting the full advantage of an IP system at this point. I think it may get to that point someday, but we're not there yet.
Okay, the next thing I'm going to touch on is how do we keep our systems on the cutting edge, keeping your systems up to date. And the reasons you have to keep your systems up to date are with technology comes, you need a new operating system. Operating system meaning Windows. Instead of Windows 11, we're going to be at Windows 18 pretty soon. And technology marches on. And if you leave your system in the background, you're going to be stuck in the past. So the other thing I'm going to touch real quick is islands of information.
Go ahead.
We talked about your lighting system and your HVAC system. They're running on the same computer. Now, all of a sudden, the lighting system gets upgraded and it needs a new computer. The HVAC's got to come with it. So one of the other points I want to make here is some of these maintenance costs, like you're going to upgrade the license. You can have your tenants pay for this in operating costs. Right. It's not going to be wait 5 years and have a big expense where you got to capital it or something like that. You can put this into your operating costs if you do the annual maintenance agreements. Security concerns too. Security concerns are a problem too. If all of a sudden your IT guys are requiring 2-factor authentication for you to log in, you need to update it, or third-party system integration. If all of a sudden the next third-party system says it needs this version.
Yeah, and the majority of what we hit here is referring to the kind of more or less the computer, the server itself. You know, along with that, we need to make sure we're keeping the actual devices on the network, or running our heat pumps, our VAVs, our air handlers. Those devices get old too. It's not uncommon to go into a building with 20-plus-year-old controllers running these pieces of equipment. They're still functioning, but the problem is as they start to fail, there's no direct replacement available for a lot of these things. So as they've gotten 10, 20 years older, it becomes very expensive all of a sudden, because now it's an emergency situation. The air handler is down, we need it to run right now, which sometimes turns into upgrading a whole lot more hardware than just the air handler itself, depending upon the situation. So when you can, keeping yourself a little more up to date. I don't carry a 10-year-old phone because, well, they don't exist anymore. My computer is not that old. These are all pieces of electronics that are constantly being updated and changed. Maybe as simple as you have a tenant build out happening in your building, and that gives you an opportunity. Let's say it's been in there for 15 years. I can upgrade the controls in this area. Maybe we can work on pieces of it, so we don't have all of a sudden a whole building that's way out of date.
Perfectly put. So you got to look at it holistically. You got to look at your building as a whole. So we're going to talk about service contracts, software maintenance agreements here for a second. You know, as I say here, we've all been there. Your PC doesn't start, and your contractor comes out and says, "Well, I can't get Windows 7 PC, and you're going to have to go to Windows 12." And guess what? Your software doesn't run on Windows 12. So now you're in a bind, paying overtime, getting everything updated. If you can keep on top of it, you're not going to have that issue. You're going to do it over time. And like I said here, true, the software maintenance agreements, they are money makers for the contractors, but that's how they keep everything up to date. That's how they make sure their systems are going to work with the next Windows system. They've got a bunch of guys making sure that that they're going to be able to talk to the next lighting control system, and that everything's going to talk together. So, and like I said before, this can be paid by the tenant in the operating costs.
Yeah, the goal is just never falling behind to the point where it's hard to catch up. You know, eliminating that downtime, trying to just keep your building functional.
And then cybersecurity too. You might get a new Windows update, and then all of a sudden you can't log into your system because it's your system 6 years old and it needs dual factor authentication or whatever it might be. So cybersecurity is driving every single update out there. I think there's not too much for operational that you see. It's almost all security. And then third-party programs. If all of a sudden you get you get a new lighting system, well, my old system can't talk to the new lighting system. So making sure that you're ready to integrate all that stuff. So again, I think we only got a couple minutes left, so we're going to kind of skip through a little bit quicker. So you hear the term analytics and reporting. You can't fix it unless you know it's broken, basically.
Right.
Analytics are, and there's a lot of third-party ones out there. What analytics do is they can go into an open system and mine for data. And the people that set up these analytic programs, they know how to go get the data, how to manipulate the data and show you on the screen. We can do predictive maintenance where you can see that air handler is struggling to make it. Maybe the belts are slipping. There's some of these analytic programs get really, really in depth, and it's over my head how they program them.
They get so in depth. Yeah, I've had calls on buildings that are running specific analytics programs like this. They'll go, "Hey, this room takes longer than the rest of them in the area to get up to temp. What's going on?" You go to look at it, and sure enough, the heating coil's plugged. Well, it found it.
Yeah,
it's crazy what they can.
There's a lot of neat analytics programs that do predictive maintenance, and they'll tell you it's broken before you know it's broken.
Yep.
Okay. So in summary, we're going to take questions here in a little bit. Raise your hand, but going forward, it's all technology driven. It's and open protocols. Everything is open protocols. That's the future. That's the trends. Having everything open, and we all know why that is, and keeping up with technology. So I'm going to read this last sentence. The specifying engineers and others in the industry are optimistically looking at the future as now, but there's too many forces dragging an anchor on it for the implementation of their, and I put control Shangri-La.
I like that.
They, all these engineers think they're going to snap their fingers and everything's going to be smart building and everything's going to be open and tied together. It's going to be a few years. It's going to be some pain.
Right.
So as you look on the screen there's our contact info. If you want to take a picture of that or jot it down or something. If you've got any questions, feel free to contact any one of us. I know we've only got about 5 minutes left in the meeting, but contact us directly. We'll take your phone call if we're not not on the phone or busy. So
right. Phone rings a lot, so well, we'll call you back.
Okay. Daryl, are you taking over? Or?
I can take over now if there's no questions. We'll give a second or two for any more questions that might come up.
So Damon, you're asking here, I saw, Damon, you're asking if we can recommend some training engineers to get a better handle on the building automation comes together. It depends on the kind of system you got. I don't know who your primary controls contractor is, but I would reach out to them first. If you're not getting what you need, you can sure contact Luke or myself.
Right. We've done, I'm sure you've done the same. We've done trainings for our customers when they want to know more about it, just to get them a little more up to speed on what they have at their fingertips.
Yeah, as far as training on your system, reach out to somebody who knows your system. If you reach out to Luke or myself, we're gonna come in blind. We're gonna need to look at your building before we can even
We have to
begin to
figure
train
your
you
building
on.
out.
So I would reach out to whoever your primary controls contractor is.
Okay, it looks like we done with the questions. Hey, we'd like to thank Paul and Lou for giving y'all time to present to our engineering organization today. I know y'all gave us a lot to think about in new and old buildings.
Yeah, we thought we were gonna get about 45 minutes, so we kind of sped through a little bit of the stuff. We got a lot of stuff in there. If you guys want, if anybody wants, I can send them this PowerPoint presentation. I'll just send it to them. You guys could go through it.
I
So,
think that'd be great if you wouldn't mind sending it to Riley and myself.
okay.
You can just get it out to the other engineers.
Yeah, well, just reach out. Yeah, go ahead and reach out to Daryl and he'll get it to you. I'll make sure he's got a copy.
That'd be great. We appreciate y'all giving us your time.
Oh yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Real quick, a couple of more things that we got coming up, just to recap. And so just remember, November 3rd is our next Engineer Association meeting, and it will be in person. October, BOMA has the 15 for 12 member deal. So that's basically you can join if you're a member of BOMA, you can join for free. And also register your building for the 2022 Toby competition by October 15th. So it's coming up quick, guys. And I know they're looking for some buildings, so let's go ahead and do our best to participate. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you.